I sure hope that fourth frog could swim. So as many of you know, I work as a hospital chaplain at John Muir Health in Concord. Well, this last week, I faced a situation that was difficult for me. It was really frustrating, and it actually caused me a little bit of pain. And so I went to my supervisor and I started to talk to her about it because I wasn't sure how to address it. It was risky for me to even think about talking to the person who had hurt me. So she started to ask me some questions about the situation. She started to tell me some of how she responded to what I was telling her. She started to tell me different angles of how I might want to look at what I was experiencing, understanding what I was feeling, and encouraging me to go deeper. And so, for about 30 minutes, we talked about this conundrum of mine. And at the end of it, my supervisor apologized. She said, "You came here to get some clarity, but I think I just ended up muddying the waters for you." And I told her, yeah, she had. But it wasn't a bad thing. In fact, that conversation, it complicated my feelings and thoughts about that situation, and it created something that I could work with. It created a mud that I could put my hands into, get messy with, and shape into a myriad of possibilities. Now, I'm not going to stick my hands in that mud because I'm in a suit. But we don't often think about muddying the waters as a good thing. We often see it as confusing issues, distracting us from what is really happening, hiding the truth. It's messy, and we don't always like messy. Messy is hard. It's gross, it sticks underneath your fingernails, and it leads to a really high dry cleaning bill. Having clarity feels so much easier. It's less complicated. We're more certain about what is right and wrong, what is good and what is bad. But why? What is it about the messiness of that lack of clarity, that uncertainty, that we don't like? Why are we so resistant to muddying the waters? Why is it so tempting to push that fourth frog off the log? The reality is we are already living in muddy times. Our lives are already filled with uncertainty of various kinds. We encounter the unknown and the unfamiliar every day, whether we like it or not. A quick glance at top news stories tells us that there are so many things that are uncertain. Healthcare and the fate of the Affordable Care Act. Will you be able to afford insurance next year? Environmental degradation and the state of our Earth home. How much longer can we waste? Security and the possibility of nuclear weapons development. As a public school kid, access to adequately funded public education. We encounter this uncertainty almost every time we open a newspaper, a browser on our computers, or a social media app on our phones. And beyond the political realm, we see uncertainty operating in other aspects of our world. Though others were disappointed, I was thrilled last month when what looked like a certain victory for the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl took an unexpected turn and resulted in a Patriots victory. And I'm pretty sure I hold a pretty controversial opinion on that one, so I'll offer another example. Our weather. Those of you who were in the area last Sunday may remember how it felt as though the weather changed by the minute. It was impossible to say for certain if it was going to rain, be sunny, or heck, even hail in the next 30 seconds. And this week we have seen both snow on Mount Diablo and nearly 80-degree weather. The weather waters are quite muddy at the moment, literally and figuratively. And within our own individual lives, many of us have found ourselves in the midst of great uncertainty. In my work as a hospital chaplain, I am often sitting with patients and families who are in that limbo space of not knowing what is happening to their bodies or to their loved ones. Some even living with the uncertainty of whether they will be alive tomorrow. For some of you, the experience of uncertainty regarding a loved one's life is one that is all too painfully familiar. And perhaps for some of us in this community, that uncertainty is about our own health. Will this treatment work? Will my chronic pain be more manageable today? Will my depression keep me from getting out of bed? And this uncertainty goes beyond our physical health. Many of us also know the uncertainty that comes with the need for employment. Maybe we don't feel secure in our jobs, scared that we may be fired or let go at any time. Maybe we are uncertain if we will be able to work or find work again. Maybe we are uncertain about where our next job will take us. Will we have to move far away to find something to support ourselves? And for some of us in this world, that uncertainty is further compounded by the identities we hold. For many people of color, and particularly for Black children, youth, and adults, the uncertainty of will I live to see tomorrow, it's not just a question about their health. It's a question that can infiltrate their everyday life. For trans, genderqueer, and gender nonconforming youth and adults, there is the uncertainty of being able to be oneself fully, of having access not only to bathrooms that fit one's identity, but access to informed health care, access to welcoming communities, access to the right to be your own authentic self. That uncertainty is a part of everyday life. That uncertainty about whether or not it is safe to be you is something this community faces every day. And for immigrants, documented and undocumented, uncertainty may dominate their life with this question: will I make it home at the end of the day? Not being certain whether or not you will be welcome, whether or not you will be accused of being a threat, whether you will be deported or detained for no reason except where you came from. The waters of your safety have been muddied in terrifying ways. The list of these marginalized identities that live with this greater degree of uncertainty goes on, and ironically makes one thing very clear. Some forms of uncertainty are indeed troubling. Some waters, like the certainty that you are safe to be who you are, should never be muddied. Whether we live with marginalized identities or not, uncertainty can be a scary thing. Uncertainty means we don't have control over everything that happens to us or the people we love. Uncertainty means we cannot protect ourselves from every risk, cannot predict or account for every variable. Uncertainty means we cannot solve every problem that we encounter, that as much as we would like to try, we can't do everything. Uncertainty means that there are times in our lives when we will feel helpless, powerless, unstable. Uncertainty reminds us that we are limited, that we are vulnerable. Like the frogs in our reading, uncertainty impacts our understanding of what is real, what we think we know is real. When we find ourselves in motion, a motion that we can't seem to control, we may desperately try to find something to hold on to that gives us that control. Any answer that helps us to make meaning out of what is happening to us. Any answer that gives the illusion of security and certainty. For those first three frogs in our story, having their one truth be the only truth helped each of them feel like they had control over the sudden change in their reality. But the second it was proposed that there may be other experiences competing with theirs, their sense of certainty was threatened. Their fragile grasp on stability in the midst of sudden motion was in danger. And so they eliminated part of that threat. They shoved it into the water. Outside of this fictional amphibious altercation, we can now see how the struggle to grasp onto some form of certainty has manifested itself in our world. As our society has continued to move towards more inclusive forms of being together, acknowledging the needs and rights of a more diverse range of people, we have also experienced what has felt like a rise in opposition to that movement. As we have shifted in our understandings of what love can look like, what accessibility means, what rights women have over what happens to their bodies, we continue to hear voices contest those shifts as violations of what they see as a strict and clear moral code. This sort of what we might call fundamentalism comes from a place of seeking certainty in the midst of changing realities. Fundamentalism in response to change is in part an attempt to find something to hold on to that makes us feel like we are stable in our understanding of what is real and good, that we are in control of our lives and not being bandied about like tumbleweeds in the wind. Now, it may feel easier to point out what some might call conservative fundamentalism as the primary place where this struggle exists. But even in more progressive communities like this one, we too fall into that human habit. We can have our own fundamental truths that we hold on to make our experience of reality easier to navigate, less confusing. We have our own ideas of what is real that we can sometimes be unwilling to let go of. Republicans are out of touch. Trump supporters are racist and homophobic. Unitarian Universalism is the most progressive faith tradition. I'll be honest, that second one is probably the hardest one for me to call fundamentalist. For one thing, we have seen racist organizations and individuals explicitly support the current administration's actions. My own philosophy of justice is that anyone ignoring the racist and homophobic policies coming from Washington these days is actually allowing those oppressions to continue. But in my work as a chaplain, I have regularly encountered individuals whose political inclinations differ from my own. It would be easy to write them off as racist, as bigoted. But when I hear aspects of their stories, hear the real struggles and suffering that they have encountered in recent years, my waters get muddied. Whether or not what they believe are the main reasons for their pain and hardship is true, my uncertainty about who they are and what they believe is challenged. The clarity I had assumed about their story is complexified. And so ministering to these patients has given me an insight to another side of uncertainty and the value of its existence in our lives. The confusion and messiness I felt in these patient encounters showed me the necessity of some kinds of uncertainty. In those moments, uncertainty encouraged me to make humility my starting place. The uncertainty I felt in those encounters showed me that what I thought was clarity and certainty was actually feelings of superiority. I was invited to admit the limits of my knowing and seeing, admit that though my truth could still be true, there was more to reality than my own experience of it. And in that humble place, I discovered some of the gifts uncertainty can offer. Uncertainty has this both and, one of my favorite expressions, nature. It's a place where our fears and our hopes meet. Uncertainty can be a time of openness, of curiosity. Uncertainty can be a time where we risk, where we try something new without knowing if we will be perfect at it, and embracing the fact that we're not experts. We're all works in progress. Uncertainty can be a time to risk and to trust that even if we're going to look foolish, it will be okay. We're no less worthy or accepted for it. And in our personal lives, uncertainty invites us to ask for help and support in those times of fear, of challenge, of loss. Uncertainty invites us to trust that the connections and love that we may not see at the moment are there. They are there and they are supporting us. Uncertainty can be a time when we feel that we are separate or alone. But if we are willing to trust, to risk, to reach out, we may discover something that we did not know was always there. Uncertainty can be avoided if we think it is dark, scary, and threatening. Or it can be embraced as something that is dark, fertile, and nurturing. So what would it be like for us to practice uncertainty? We're going to try it. I'm going to invite, in a moment, this half of the room to say the phrase, "I don't know." And then I'm going to invite this half of the room to say, "It's okay. I don't know either." On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
I don't know. It's okay. I don't know either.
Oh, y'all are so good at that. At its best, the embrace of uncertainty is what this community can offer to each other and to our world. At our open-hearted, open-minded best, we are that fourth frog. We are playing in that muddy water. In the midst of movement and uncertainty, we as a community are able to hold multiple truths and come to this nuanced understanding of our shared reality. We are able to engage both aspects of that principle, that free and responsible search for truth and meaning, without feeling threatened by differences in experience and understanding. When we encounter truths that collide with our own, rather than seek to destroy them, we strive to understand them. We welcome the muddying of our waters, the blending of our realities, and we welcome the possibility of co-creating something new. In the midst of uncertainty, we don't disengage. We seek deeper, richer, and more fertile connections and creations. I'm not saying engaging uncertainty won't be hard. It's messy, and it's risky. And the results, they're not always clear. But if we are willing to risk, to trust, to engage in that unknown and believe in that fertile darkness, we can plant something in it. We can plant something, not knowing what will come out of it, but we can trust that together, something new will be created.